I'm Julie Zenner along with Dennis Anderson, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
The University of Minnesota Duluth is recognizing American Indian history of the land the university is located upon. We'll learn more about this formal land acknowledgement.
State Senator Erik Simonson is here to talk about a tour he took of energy-intensive industry in the region and the future of energy policy in Minnesota.
And we'll have some of the week's economic headlines from Business North.
It's all coming up next on Almanac North. And welcome to Almanac North. Thanks for watching. And Danny, it's good to be back in the studio after our special broadcast from the Catalyst Festival last week. Lots of fun.
We took the show on the road. It was a lot of fun, but good to get back into the building again where everything is more familiar.
More familiar, but we will also have fun tonight.
I think we will too.
All right. We have some interesting topics, so let's get started.
All right, that we certainly do. Thank you again, Julie. Well, the University of Minnesota Duluth will recognize a Native American history of the land it is located on at a ceremony next week. The land acknowledgement is formal recognition of the unique and centuries-old relationship between American Indians and their traditional territories. And so, here to tell us more is Rick Smith, director of UMD's American Indian Learning Resource Center. Alexander Ahuchin is a senior at UMD and a Fond du Lac tribal member. And Wayne Dupree is director of environmental programs with the Fond du Lac Band. Welcome to all three of you. Thank you so very much for being here tonight. Good to have you aboard. Rick, why is land acknowledgement so important, both to UMD, to the Ojibwe people, and to the community at large?
I think it's important because it creates an awareness of the indigenous people from here and the first conservationists of this land, and to recognize that and the importance of sustainability for the future, to learn more about each other and understand each other so we can live together.
Do you know how the land was used back in those days?
Wayne could probably address that more than I can, but the trees that used to be here were 150 feet tall, like
Really?
10 feet in circumference. This was a vast timberland at one time.
Wayne, maybe you want to chime in.
Well, we're the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, and our original homeland was where Fond du Lac Duluth is right now. And our Biaswa, one of the previous chiefs of our nation, was asked at one point in time, "Why do you want to live here?" He said, "I can go hunting for buffalo right a day's walk from here. I've got all the fish that I can need right here in this river. And anything that we need to survive is within a day's walk. And it's the Mecca for our people." He didn't use the term Mecca, but
Sure.
that's what he meant, is this is our Mecca.
Alexandra, what message does it send to you as an American Indian student that UMD is going to be making this public land acknowledgement?
I think it's super cool to understand like the relationship between treaty land and like what that means for what it actually is. So many people think like, oh, treaty land is like land that we gave you permission to have, and in fact it's like land that we traded so that we can like hunt and gather on this space. But like my nation, or like the Ojibwe people, gave this land so that the city and the school can be a place where we can study. So I just think it's super cool.
So Rick, is there going to be a ceremony or a celebration when this land is officially acknowledged?
On Tuesday, the 22nd at 3 o'clock in the ballroom at UMD, there will be an event. We'll start things off in a good way with a ceremony. It'll be done by Mike Manell, one of our alumni and a Fond du Lac Band member. He'll do a prayer for the acknowledgement and a welcome, and then also plus the food that's there, and then we'll have speakers as well, plus food.
A feast.
It's, they have to have food, welcome people, and make sure that they feel welcome and a part of it.
Sure.
Rick, is this an unusual move on the part of a university, or is this something that has been occurring more frequently across the country?
I can't speak for across the country. I know that they have a land acknowledgement statement at the Twin Cities campus, and here at UMD, I'm thankful that we have Chancellor Black, who has been very sensitive and respectful to the needs of our students and our people. In the strategic plan, we have parts in the vision statement and the mission statement about acknowledging Indian people as more of a political entity rather than a race or ethnic minority. So part of that is consultation with the tribes and respecting that political status. And the Chancellor's been very good about that. And he is supporting this 100% and has sought endorsement for all the tribes in Minnesota for this event and has welcomed them to come and be a part of it as well.
Wayne, is there some concern that after next week, after the ceremony, that the land acknowledgement will be forgotten and everything just becomes status quo again?
I don't know that there's that kind of a concern. I think you had asked about what kind of acknowledgement are there throughout the country. I know that with this new administration in the city of Duluth, they've come to the Fond du Lac Reservation and asked us to help with them with naming many like new trails that are happening throughout the western waterfront, and also maybe helping to rename or co-name many of the areas that had Ojibwe names in the first place. So it's an
You're
acknowledgement
making some progress.
and progress as well. Yep. You know, I kind of went around the whole area at one point in time, just did like a content analysis of all of the things, symbols that are in the area. This was prior to this happening. And you see Jay Cook, you see Leif Erikson, you see those kind of things, but you don't see anything Ojibwe. But I see a new effort by this administration and hopefully from, you know, many of the people that lived here for a long period of time, because we all share a sense of place. And this sense of place, or this place, has provided for us, and we have a relationship with it. So I think the more we include those other perspectives in our sense of place, the better off we all are.
Alexandra, you returned to UMD, or you came to UMD after studying American Indian Studies in Arizona,
Correct.
I understand.
Yeah.
Was the kind of the attitude toward Native relations part of that, and how the UMD really deals with the American Indian population in a positive way?
It's so different. I mean, each of the universities catered to the group of people that was predominant there. So like UMD is caters to Ojibwe people, but at the University of Arizona, it had a lot to do with like the Yaqui and the Navajo people. I don't think they had a land acknowledgement statement when I lived there, but I did learn about like the Truth and Reconciliation process up in Canada, and that's where a lot of these land acknowledgements kind of started gaining more popularity in the process of like the government in Canada trying to recognize their wrongdoings and colonization of Canada. A lot of these big institutions started doing these acknowledgements to like the people that came before, saying, hey, you know, this was what was before us, and we just want to recognize that. So, I mean, I've heard about it happening there, and it's really cool that it's kind of trickling down into, especially like where I go to school. So.
Speaking of going to school, I understand you want to become a dentist. Are there many people within your community who are following that same track?
As far as I know, I'm the first person from our band to pursue a career as a doctor, and I think that's pretty cool. But I'm so connected to the place here. Like I moved away; it was really good to experience other places. There's no water in Arizona, so I came back, you know, for the water. But this is my place, and this is the place of my ancestors, and like my ancestors survived and endured here. So like the process of these land acknowledgements, like recognizing that all these people came before me And I'm here now and I can experience all of this, and it's my responsibility to provide that for the future generation.
Good attitude.
Right?
Wayne, let's talk a little bit about plans for the Great Lakes Woodland Indian Cultural Interpretive Center, because it sounds like that's an idea that's really percolating right now.
You know, for many years, people have talked about having something that acknowledges the first peoples of this land. And I've had lots of conversations. Rick and I kind of initiated a get-together with some folks, and we had help from Northeast Regional Partnership, the extension program, to get some graduate students to help us do kind of an analysis, a needs analysis, and see what's best for the area, for maybe something that can showcase our language, culture, and our relationship with the land. So, like I say, it's kind of in formation stage, but it's really ready for that next stage of development as well. We need to decide what kind of form of governance that will happen, maybe a nonprofit, or more than likely a nonprofit that represents all the tribes in the region.
Yeah. Rick, who would you like to see use an interpretive center?
Welcome everybody. It's important that, that's the reason for it, to educate people. And hopefully it'll be a place for tourism, and not tourism for money, but for educating people about the people of this land and how the importance of understanding our prophecies, where all four races are to come together so we can live together, sustain our living, but to learn about each other and respect each other's ways.
How could this center maybe help bring that prophecy to life?
I think part of it is just understanding it's the unknown. People don't know what they don't know. And to understand the people that are here and the things that we have to offer and other people have to offer, and bring us together to make this a better place, just to learn about us. The plan for this interpretative center is not only to be an interpretative center inside, but also outside. Plants, animals, the area, the water, the importance of that water and how we need it to sustain our lives. So the project from the beginning was really about sustainability, but how do you bring these four groups together to sustain?
Are you looking at a timetable to build this, or are we too early in the planning stages yet?
We're too early at this point in time, but that's something that should be happening soon. Putting it on like a project schedule. Yeah.
Alexandra, the value of preserving the traditions and customs, what does that mean to you as an American Indian woman?
It's so important. So I grew up like not learning about any of my traditions, and it's something that I started to discover on my own. And within discovering those traditions, I found myself and helped learn about my own identity, and it helped guide me on my path. I mean, if I didn't know that I came from a Native nation and that I had some of these fundamental stories that kind of have guided me to where I am, I don't know that like I would be trying to be a doctor without knowing that like my community needs it.
Sure.
We need to see it. So
I wish we had more time to keep talking, but we don't. I have a lot more questions, but want to thank all three of you for being here. Rick, Alexandra, and Wayne, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Miigwech.
Thank you. Northeastern Minnesota is blessed with an abundance of natural resources and large industrial plants that utilize those resources. The region's mining companies, paper mills, and other industries consume large quantities of power. With changing technology and a move to cleaner energy production, keeping up with the region's power needs will require long-term planning. Last week, State Senator Erik Simonson of Duluth toured some of the region's large industrial plants, and he joins us now. And welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Now, Senator, you're a member of the Senate Energy and Utilities Policy Committee.
Right.
Why was it important for you to go out and visit the big energy users in our region?
Well, I think what we've seen over the course of the last couple of years at the legislature and the Energy Committee is this discussion evolving about what is our next step in terms of setting our renewable energy goals for the state. The last time we visited this was in 2007, and we set pretty lofty goals for our utilities to meet by a certain period in time, meeting the renewable energy standard. And much to our surprise, most of our utilities have far surpassed that expectation already on their own. Many times the change to renewables has been driven by the market. It's driven a lot by the consumers and by the customers that the utilities serve. So the discussion has been, what is the next step? Do we go to a 50% by a certain year? Do we go to 100% by a certain year? And much of it is driven by the conversation about climate change and what the impact of carbon dioxide emissions is on climate change. So as we have this discussion, we talk a lot about the link between energy policy and jobs and economic development. And here in the Northland, that's such a direct communication between the two, no doubt. Mining, paper mills, those are a big part of our economy in northeastern Minnesota. So we want to make sure that the policy that we're putting forward doesn't drive people out of business and kind of take away those jobs.
So, Senator, what will you do with the information you gleaned on this tour?
Well, I've been able to, I serve as the minority lead on the committee, so I have a broader responsibility than just the city of Duluth. We kind of try to look at the state as a whole, but I think the message that I bring back to my colleagues is that the service territory that Minnesota Power serves is much different than, say, Xcel Energy and the customer base that they have. As an example, we have about 6, I think, operating taconite mines right now. One of those taconite mines consumes the same amount of electricity as all of the homes across the city of Minneapolis. It's just a massive amount of energy, and we can't necessarily serve that yet, all with renewables. It kind of takes a mixture of different energy sources. So bringing that message back and having the firsthand ability to see that was important to me.
Mm-hmm. So as you talked with industry leaders, was that then the primary message that they had for you, or were there some other common themes that you experienced as you visited each of these places?
Right, it's both. Just about every place that we visited, internally they're doing a lot of things to try to kind of green up their operation as well. They're being driven much like everybody else is being driven to take those initiatives and take those steps. But I think ultimately these are energy intensive industries that rely significantly on power. For example, there are several places that we visited where their electricity bill is about 30% of their bottom line, which is huge. And for a paper mill like Verso here in West Duluth, their margins are so slim that if we're not careful with our energy policy and we go up too quickly to raise the rates on them, that could very quickly go away, and we don't want to see that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Is industry around this area, Erik, looking at perhaps in 50 years one source of energy out there, or are they looking at a variety of different sources but different from the kind we have today?
Right, and if I could tell you exactly what it'll be in 50 years,
You have no idea.
I would, but I don't know. But I would say this, today what is necessary is a broad mix of energy sources.
Still a broad mix.
Because we have to maintain a certain load of power generation 24/7 every single day of the year. The technology hasn't caught up for us to be able to do that with renewables just yet.
Yeah.
Who knows what it'll be 10 years from now.
Is anybody talking nuclear?
Oh yeah, we're having big conversations about nuclear because Xcel Energy has 2 large nuclear plants, one in Monticello and one in Prairie Island. Those are set, their licenses are set to expire here in about 10 years or so. So we're having conversations about, does that continue? Because that's a carbon-free source of electricity. The challenge with nuclear is how do we dispose of the nuclear waste?
You mentioned that so much of the discussion politically is being driven by climate change and concerns over that.
Yeah.
You live in an area where you have some of these big power users. Generally, do you think that lawmakers are understanding that relationship and considering the economic implications of some of these environmental mandates that are coming down?
I think unless you are from here or have spent a fair amount of time here, it's hard to wrap your head around just how much electricity they do consume. But we've been able to, bring other groups up here to kind of walk them through some of these processes so that they really understand it. And it's not to say that these industries aren't making shifts on their own, because they are. But we just kind of owe it to make sure that we keep this economy strong and we keep these jobs here in northeastern Minnesota, so that as we consider this policy, not every utility area is going to be created equally.
Is the Minnesota legislature, Eric, doing anything to generate policy to try to get everybody in some cohesive direction?
Well, I think they are. I mean, I think that's our overall goal. And if everybody was created equally, I think that would be easy to do, but we're not. Xcel is very different from Minnesota Power, is very different from Otter Tail. And then we have all of our co-ops and municipals kind of in between that and interspersed. But I think our goal is to keep it as simple as we can and to keep rates low for residential, commercial and industrial as well.
Have state laws in the past and policies such as that Next Generation Energy Act of 2007, do you think that has really moved energy providers forward? I know that they've exceeded some of those standards already. Do you think that would have happened without those policies in place?
Well, it's hard to say. I'd like to think that it would have happened just because of what we've seen in the last 10 or 12 years, because they have gone above and beyond. Minnesota Power is set to be 50% renewable by 2021, and I think 10 years ago nobody would have anticipated that. So that's huge, but I think the first step that we took in setting that initial renewable standard was good for Minnesota. Now we just have to be really careful about what that next step is.
Given the circumstances of world politics, is our energy grid secure today?
It's not as secure as it should be. Right? I mean, that's something that we have to continuously work on and consider. We also have to continuously work on and consider the transmission capabilities. It's one thing to be purchasing, large amount of wind energy from, say, the western part of the country, but getting it from there to here is another challenge. Our transmission capabilities need significant upgrades in certain areas, so that's part of the puzzle too.
And you said that some of your colleagues are going to be doing a similar tour in the upcoming weeks?
Right, so we've got some of the Republican members of the Senate that sit on either the Jobs Committee or the Energy Committee will be coming up and touring some of these same sites to put their eyes on it and try to get a good understanding of what that link is between the economy and energy policy.
Maybe some bipartisan support coming up in the future.
It's funny, there's not a lot of partisan issues in energy, it's more about geographic location.
All right, well, I'm getting the wrap,
All right.
but State Senator Erik Simonson, thank you. Good conversation. Always good to have you.
Thanks, Senator.
You're welcome.
Let's turn now to the week's business headlines from our friends at Business North. Lakehead Constructors has completed a new $6.5 million facility in Superior. Work on the building on Winter Street took slightly less than 5 months. The 28,000 square foot structure replaces a building it had occupied for 65 years near Husky Refinery. Lakehead also invested recently in Aurora, remodeling the former Minnesota Power and Vermilion Federal Credit Union building. The construction firm specializes in industrial maintenance, working for utilities, mining companies, paper mills, and railroads.
LHB completed its second acquisition this month by purchasing Natural Resources Engineering Company of Superior. LHB's chief executive said the acquisition will strengthen and expand its service in the pipeline and industrial sectors. LHB earlier announced its purchase of Cermak Roads Architects of St. Paul. LHB's expanded business will serve more than 300 clients from 5 offices in Minnesota and Wisconsin.
Lake Country Power has opened its new Cohasset Service Center, which replaces an aging, overcrowded building in Grand Rapids. General Manager Greg Randa said equipment, material, and vehicles will now be stored undercover, and the site offers improved security and efficiency. He added that the Cohasset Service Center is a long-term investment in the community. It will help, he said, meet the co-op's mission to provide members with safe and reliable service. Lake Country provides services to nearly 43,000 members. For more on these and other stories, visit businessnorth.com.
You don't have to be near a TV to keep up on our latest programs and topics. Just follow Almanac North on our social media channels. You will find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And for updates about your favorite PBS programs, visit the WDSE website, where you can also find news about the station and learn about our upcoming public events. And Denny, it looks like it's going to be a beautiful fall weekend to get out and enjoy.
If you don't get outside this weekend, you may not have another chance for a while.
And if you don't get out, you'll definitely miss the leaves because they're almost gone.
Oh, a lot of them are on the ground now.
A lot of them are indeed. Well, for Denny and the crew here at Almanac North, I'm Julie Zenner. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.